Tonight, the newly revealed body cam and the controversy as prosecutors call the police shooting of Andrew Brown Jr. justified. The image is only now being made public. The DA saying Brown used his car as a deadly weapon, driving directly at deputies trying to serve a warrant. The deputies opening fire as he tried to escape, killing him. The DA saying none will face charges tonight. The outrage from Brown's family. President Biden under mounting pressure from his own party after his call for a Mideast ceasefire is ignored. His tarmac confrontation with the only Palestinian American in Congress. The new mask divide. Texas banning masks mandates in places including schools. Other states keeping mandates for now. The deadly flood emergency. Dozens rescued. Up to 18 inches of rain. The major change for cancer screenings. And our journey across America to Louisville. My conversations with the police chief and Breonna Taylor's mother more than a year after Taylor was killed by police. What the chief said when I asked her, is there a link between policing and racism?
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt. Across America. Reporting tonight from Louisville.
Good evening. Day 2 of our Across America journey, Louisville, Kentucky, a proud and historic city that hit a painful crossroads after the police shooting death of Breonna Taylor. My interviews with her mom and the city's new police chief are coming up. But we're going to start with today's finding in another police shooting of a black man that has sent emotions running high for weeks in North Carolina. The prosecutor there now saying the sheriff's deputies who shot and killed Andrew Brown Jr. in his driveway were justified, concluding they fired only after Brown used his car as a weapon, endangering deputies. The account sharply contradicts his family's characterization of body cam video they were shown. For the first time, the public today given a glimpse of police video that prosecutors say supports their conclusion that deputies played it by the book. Our Katie Beck has late details.
Tonight, after weeks of silence on the Andrew Brown Jr. investigation.
Mr. Brown's death, while tragic, was justified.
District Attorney Andrew Womble defending deputies' decision to shoot Brown and declining to press charges, saying Brown was a threat to their safety and the public's, his vehicle a deadly weapon.
The officers who used deadly force on Andrew Brown Jr. did so reasonably and only when a violent felon used a deadly weapon to place their lives in danger.
The DA showing a portion of the publicly withheld body camera footage. The 44-second interaction shows uniformed deputies arriving in a marked vehicle at Brown's home to serve search and arrest warrants for drugs. Brown, seated in his car, is quickly surrounded and told to exit the vehicle. One deputy attempts to open Brown's door and is nearly pulled off his feet as Brown reverses his car. Brown then drives forward, forcing another deputy to jump out of the way. Then a first shot is fired through the front windshield. Officers firing several more shots from the side and rear. Brown attempts to flee, crossing a vacant lot, then crashing into a nearby tree. The district attorney noting drugs were later found in the car. The Brown family calls the outcome a slap in the face.
The family is going to explore all possible legal remedies, but we still want the Department of Justice, and we have some hope that they would intervene.
The sheriff confirms the 3 deputies who fired their weapons in the shooting will keep their jobs, but be disciplined and retrained. Meanwhile, in the community, people take to the streets again to demand justice. Lester?
All right, Katie Beck tonight. Thank you. And police use of force against black people has come under sharp scrutiny in so many American cities. Here in Louisville, the police shooting death of Breonna Taylor last year amplified demands for change. Tonight, we're back to understand what change here could look like. Louisville is a city desperately in search of a way to heal. A new chief determined to embrace and lead change in a broken police department.
Do you think there's a connection between policing and racism?
Oh, I know there is. I mean, I employ human beings. They come to the table, they develop inherent biases. Data supports that all day long. Now, I think it's important to distinguish that that's not saying police are racist. I think that what happens is we focus on the end result and not the process.
A grieving mother determined not to allow her daughter's death at the hands of police go unpunished.
I want these officers to be charged for her murder, because that's exactly what it was.
As the nation was shutting down from COVID 14 months ago, what happened here in March 2020 stopped Louisville in its tracks. The shooting death of Breonna Taylor, an innocent 26-year-old woman gunned down by police in her own home as they executed a no-knock warrant. It happened after Taylor's boyfriend fired first, thinking they were intruders. The tragedy exposing a festering wound in this city. Today, its police department under a Justice Department investigation focused on whether Louisville Metro Police have engaged in systematic and unlawful behavior.
It will also assess whether LMPD engages in discriminatory conduct on the basis of race.
Under not just the spotlight of Louisville, but the entire nation, Erica Shields was hired to lead Louisville Police in January. Her hiring controversial due to the police-involved shooting of Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta, where she served as police chief and resigned. Shields is a self-described reformer who welcomes the federal investigation.
So they've come to look at patterns and practices. I think that's fantastic. That being said, it's really important to me that when they conclude their report in 6 or 9 months, we have things on track and can stand behind the work that we're doing.
But some say the tension and distrust has long existed, fueled by decades of racism and segregation. This is the 9th Street Divide. There's no signage marking it, but it's known to local residents as a physical and economic separation of West Louisville, a mostly black community, from the rest of the city, a symbolic racial divide. In Louisville, black residents represent 21% of the population, but were involved in around 50% of the police use of force incidents.
It appears you're going to have to reconcile the Breonna Taylor death. The justice system declined to prosecute anyone directly in her killing. How do you move past that?
Breonna Taylor's death is sickening. I sincerely hope that the FBI in their investigation might close some of the gap here. I have very real concerns about how the warrant was drawn up, because I do think it's a miscarriage of justice if you can be in your residence, shot and killed by law enforcement, and no one's held accountable for it.
Tamika Palmer, Breonna Taylor's mom, is still fighting for accountability. None of the 3 officers involved was charged in Taylor's death, the only indictment for shots that went into a neighbor's wall. At the Speed Art Museum, Promise, Witness, Remembrance reflects on the life of Taylor and the movement that followed. Palmer helped create the exhibit.
What do you love about this portrait?
Everything.
Do you hope that maybe in some way Breonna's death and police reforms here could be a model?
Definitely. I think that the way that this thing has played out in front of the world, people will definitely have to use this situation to make things better everywhere.
Chief Shields is paving a path forward.
This police department has an extremely strong culture and positive culture. There are multiple practices that are broken. There are good people here. We have absolutely room for improvement. We have to do things differently. I'm going to get them there.
This community is still processing an awful lot. In just 60 seconds, Richard Engel in Israel on spreading violence with pressure building on the U.S. to do more to stop it. We're going to turn now to the Mideast crisis. Both Hamas militants and Israel continuing their deadly assaults today. Richard Engel is there.
Today, President Biden's call for a ceasefire was ignored. Israel kept on targeting Hamas in Gaza. Hamas fired more rockets towards Israeli civilians. Israel's prime minister saying the operations show there is a price for Hamas's aggression against Israel. President Biden saying Israel has a right to defend itself. But today the conflict jumped outside of Gaza, spreading to Palestinians in Israel and the West Bank, where clashes started with stone throwing. Many here don't support Hamas, but see an opportunity to pressure Israel to give Palestinians either a homeland or equal rights. Israeli troops didn't tolerate the stones for long.
The Israelis are firing tear gas but I think we are okay to hold here for a second. But it is a very volatile, a very quickly developing situation, and it is not just in the West Bank. Palestinians inside Israel, Palestinians in Jerusalem are holding a strike. All of this in solidarity with the people of Gaza, saying that what is happening in Gaza needs to stop. And here comes the tear gas.
Soon it escalated. Palestinians hiding near the protesters opened fire on Israeli troops, injuring 2. Then Israeli forces shot back.
Just a second ago, we heard a single crack. It sounded like it could have been a sniper fire.
This ambulance took the man away. He was dead. Just a few feet away, an 8-year-old girl played. Her parents brought her here so she'd get used to all of this. And one day, carry on the fight.
And late tonight, Israeli media report diplomatic efforts involving Egypt and the United States could produce a ceasefire in the next 2 to 3 days.
Richard Engel tonight. Thank you. Kristen Welker is at the White House. Kristen, pressure is growing on President Biden to be more forceful in his call for a ceasefire. Where do things stand tonight?
Lester, the White House says diplomatic discussions are ongoing, and that's the best way to reduce the violence. But progressives have demanded more pressure on Israel. In Michigan, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian-American member of Congress, had an intense conversation with the president. Her office saying she told him Palestinian human rights are not a bargaining chip. The president said publicly he's praying for her family in the West Bank. Lester.
All right, Kristen Welker, thank you. The White House says the country is making progress against COVID, but confusion is still rampant over mask wearing. Here's Miguel Almaguer with that.
With at least 5 states ending face mask mandates this week, by the middle of next month, the U.S. may finally be a united nation, broadly implementing the CDC's new guidance for the fully vaccinated. But today in Texas, the governor issuing an executive order banning some entities from requiring masks, with violators facing a possible $1,000 fine, while in California, no face covering, no service.
All of it's confusing. Okay, one says this, one says that.
As more major retailers today said the fully vaccinated can shop without a face covering, the U.S. is facing a mostly maskless future because of continued vaccinations. 7 states have already reached the president's 4th of July goal, 70% of adults with at least 1 shot. Nationwide, the number is 60%.
The past week has been a big week, with progress and milestones that set us on a path out of this pandemic.
New daily COVID cases have now dropped to their lowest level in roughly a year, as deaths also plummet.
Tonight, progress measured by the numbers and on faces, as our future looks more like our pre-COVID past. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
Right now, 27 million people are under flash flood watches on the Gulf Coast and further north after massive flooding left several people dead. Tom Yamas is in Louisiana.
Tonight, parts of the Gulf Coast bracing for more flash flooding and the threat of tornadoes. This after a powerful overnight storm took many by surprise, killing up to 4 people and leading to hundreds of rescues, including this baby rescued in the rain.
It was like so fast. I couldn't believe it. You know, it's just started raining and the next thing you know, it was pouring.
In Baton Rouge, rescuers worked around the clock. Residents trapped in homes and apartment buildings, reachable only by boat.
This is the worst you've ever seen?
This is the worst I've ever seen here. It's crazy.
A driver drowning under this overpass. Lake Charles, Louisiana also slammed with rain, a 100-year rain event for a city still recovering from back-to-back hurricanes last year.
And Lester, it is far from over for folks like this. Nearly 30 million Americans at risk of flooding this week and more relentless rain expected. Lester?
All right, Tom Yamas, thank you. We want to tell you about a major change for cancer screenings. The U.S. Preventative Services Task Force lowered the recommended age to start screening for colorectal cancer from 50 to 45 because it's increasingly appearing in younger adults. Up next as we continue tonight, batter up in the city famous for the Louisville Slugger. While the country focused on Louisville after the death of Breonna Taylor, this city has a rich tradition of civil rights activism. Don G. from our affiliate Wave 3 News spoke with activists from 3 generations.
A demand for change has pulsed through this city over the last year. Just like in the 1960s, when the black community here boycotted stores to fight segregation. Maddie Jones has been part of all of it.
Racism now is not as blatant as it was in my time. It's gotten more sophisticated.
A civil rights icon in this city. Jones's journey began after she was denied a job which she was qualified for simply because white women in the office refused to work with her.
My mother told me then, she said, this battle will not be won just by you slamming doors and being upset. You've got to become a part of something.
Jones took that motherly advice to heart.
I saw what happened. Dogs put on you, busted in the head, arrested. How do you find the nerve to do that?
Fear has been removed, because if we were afraid, we wouldn't have accomplished what we did.
So where are we now compared to where we were then?
We're along a continuum. We're not where we were. We're not where we need to be.
Dr. Ricky Jones has not been fighting for civil rights as long, but he has been fighting just as hard.
But Gen X is the first generation which is a bridge from more overt forms of racism in America to more covert forms of racism. It morphs.
Resisted that have kept up your strength.
19-year-old Imani Smith joined the movement after the death of Breonna Taylor.
This isn't something that you can just sit home and be comfortable with. The generations before me, in my own generation, we're not letting it go.
How do we move it even more forward?
You have to be armed in this. And I'm not talking about armed with guns. I'm talking about armed with knowledge, armed with commitment, armed with love, and armed with fierceness.
And armed with support for the next generation of Maddie Jones as they continue the fight.
We got a whole lot of work to do. We need to reach out and embrace you and take your hand.
We'll take it.
All right, Don G is here with me now. Fascinating conversation. What was your takeaway?
Everyone has a unique message. We just need to listen to each other. I watched Maddie Jones as a young girl. She made a difference in my life. Now the next generation will affect those that come after them. Lester?
Don, great to have you on the program. Thanks so much. As we all reach these days for touchstones to remind us we're getting better as a country, here in the home of the Louisville Slugger, you can bet one is a trip to the ballpark.
America's pastime is back in Louisville.
It feels great. You feel alive again.
It's just exciting to come out and just do something together.
The Louisville Bats, a AAA farm team, recently returned to the field for the first time in some 600 days. And with them, a sense of normalcy.
I wanted to come out and bring him to a baseball game over the last year. He hasn't been able to experience that.
It feels great for the baseball to be back. It's actually our first time going anywhere, after the pandemic hits.
This community has been through a lot, and I think this is a step in the right direction of getting the community back together.
Hopefully we can kind of be that catalyst to help bring everybody back together and help the growing and healing process of our community.
Go back! Clearly a home run for a community looking to turn a new corner and play ball.
We want to bring them joy. We want to bring them happiness. We want to play hard for them.
It feels cool, and I just like seeing people throw the ball really far. Go back!
When we watch our fans walk out of the ballpark, we see smiles on their faces, and that's what really minor league baseball is about. It's not as much about winning and losing as it is in the major league level. Here it's more about just getting everybody together, socially interacting, having a great time. We take a lot of pride in that.
Up next, a song of inspiration for Louisville and beyond. We met a third grader here in Louisville with a powerful voice that's inspiring his school on some mornings and inspiring America.
Mornings at Bates Elementary School begin with announcements.
Good morning, students and staff. Please
followed by the national anthem.
Oh,
but this isn't a recording. On this day, it's being sung live by third grader DeCorey Johnson.
For the ramparts we walk.
Where did you learn to sing like that? Where'd you get that voice?
On my dad's side, when I was 3 years old, me and him used to harmonize.
DeCorey's rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner went viral. The response coming as no surprise to DeCorey's parents.
I just thank God every day, every time I hear that voice.
Well, I'm no singer, but did you know that when I was in school, I did the morning announcements for a while?
You did?
I did. I was the guy that did the announcements, but we didn't have a singer. We could have used someone like you.
Thank God I wasn't born back then. Thank God.
DeCorey hopes to use his big voice for even bigger plans.
In the home of the brave.
Do you know how that makes people feel when you sing that?
Yes. It's a blessing, you know. A really blessing.
Man, I am so glad I met him. That's Nightly News for this Tuesday from Louisville. We'll see you tomorrow from Cleveland. So long, everybody. Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.